People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Lou Quinto.
Lou, guess what we're going to do today?
No, we're not. Please.
We are. It's July, so it must be time for us to do an update on the state of remote work. How exciting!
I knew you were going to say that. Thank God.
Jeez, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good
speaking of remote work, I mean, I feel underdressed today. You're wearing a jacket, and I'm just here in a button down and no jacket. So I feel like today's my business casual at my remote work location.
Well, my mom's going to watch this episode, so I wanted to spiff it up a little bit for her. So, hi, Mom.
Good.
All right, let's talk about this. So we've talked about this ongoing Microsoft study, and there's a great new set of research that they've put out on what's going on with the state of remote work. So we're going to talk.
Please tell us.
Three big areas we're going to talk about today is one, starting to see a lot of companies bringing people back to work. Specifically in the news quite a bit has been JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, who have unapologetically said, get your butts back in the office.
Yeah, I understand. I think it was Jamie Dimon who said, if you can go to a restaurant in New York City and eat, you can go back to work.
Yes.
There's that empathetic leader that we're talking about.
So yes, and Goldman Sachs is right behind. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We're going to talk about how out of touch those companies are based on what we're also getting from the research about their leaders' mindsets. And it kind of explains why they're saying the things they're saying. And then the last part is what we're going to talk about is workers are exhausted at all levels. And this is taking quite a toll. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Big chunk of workers are just wiped out by what we've been going through for the last 23 years. Of the COVID pandemic.
23 years of the pandemic. Okay.
23 years. It's like dog years, the pandemic. So let's jump in and talk about, this contrast between what JP Morgan Chase and Goldman and others are saying about bringing employees back to the office. You've got downtowns begging people to come back to work.
Oh, yeah.
Because they want to fill the restaurants. But workers continue to want that flexibility. So here's what we know based on the most recent survey data. 70% of workers want flexible remote work options to continue. 65%, though, want more in-person time with their teams. 66% of decision.
Wait. Go back again. Because those first two, you've got 70. What was that first number?
70% of workers want flexible remote work,
but 65%
want to meet with their teams.
They're craving. Isn't that the way that it was worded? They're craving. For in-person meetings with their teams. Okay.
Yeah. So you got that. So they're a little schizo, but who isn't?
A little bipolar there. Yeah.
Yeah. 66% of business decision makers are talking about redesigning their office workspaces to better support hybrid. And I have opinions on that.
Yeah, I know you do.
42% of employees, though, say they lack essential office supplies at home. 1 in 10 don't have an adequate internet connection to do their job, or do they? And 46% say their employer does not help them with remote work expenses, which that's, interesting. So what do you think? Pick any of those stats or some combination, Lou. What do you think of that?
Well, I've listened to advocates on both sides, remote work, non-remote work, hybrid, non-hybrid. I've tried to listen to all of the arguments. Some of the best arguments I've heard for in-person is in-person work. There's training, there's culture, there's development that takes place in addition to the work that is important on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, from the executive side of the situation, I'm going to read to you. This article appeared in Forbes magazine, and this is David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, who seems like he's the largest critic of remote work, where he said that remote work, he called it an aberration, and that we're going to correct this as soon as possible. And he suggested that the company has been damaged by remote work. However, if you look at their year-end reporting, it seems that they reported nearly $18 billion in revenue and $7 billion in profits in just the first quarter of 2021. So, Mr. Solomon, I'm sorry to say, but that doesn't really back up what you're saying, that it needs to stop.
So are you casting aspersions on the wisdom of Solomon, Lou?
Well, are we taking this from a biblical aspect or from some guy who works in New York City?
Yes, we're going to cut the remote worker in half. That's how we're going to solve it.
Which goes right to the hybrid situation. We can take half the worker and put them in the office and half the worker, and we can leave them at home. So
let's take them this way as opposed to this way, so we at least get half a brain in both places.
Well, in fact, I'm sure that Mr. Solomon and many other CEOs would be happy if everyone at least used half a brain when they came to work on a daily basis. So anyway, to go back on it, I can see both sides of the story, but at the same time, I'm looking at it from the productivity aspect and the stress aspect of the employee. You think about those employees who live in major metropolitan areas, the Dallas area, the LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York area, who literally are commuting pre-COVID anywhere from 3 to 4 hours a day to get to their job. And here they just wake up, turn the computer on, and they're able to do their work. And they're saving 4 hours a day. And that 4 hours is stressful. You travel, I travel. And I know that during COVID, my stress level truly had gone down significantly because I wasn't worried about running to catch the next plane or getting out of town as quickly as possible to be able to get where I was going or to come home. Yeah. And I have to say that putting that suitcase up in the attic for over, well, I'll say almost a year and a half, really, I feel in a safer and calmer place because I'm able to do my work, but do it remotely. And I believe that that's what a lot of employees want to do. Is sure, they want to go to the office, they want to be around their friends. What did you say, that 65% of people are craving in-person meetings with their teams? That's fine. That's where that hybrid situation comes in. And as you said, if companies are looking at remodeling their offices so that it's less just individual cube space, but more conference or more, I'll call them huddle rooms, I think that's going to give that opportunity where people can go in, they can have their meetings and satisfy that craving that they have to be around other people. So I'm not a good prognosticator on this. I see both sides of the story, but I think you have to listen to the workers because, as you and I both know, people will seek pastures that are giving them what they want. And they have enjoyed that flexibility from working home.
I think they have. And that, at least what we've seen, I think productivity was really high early on. It tailed off based on some of the research that I saw over time.
Right.
But I do believe that people want to figure out a way to make this hybrid environment work. And I'm working with a lot of leaders. I have a group of CEOs that I work with, and they're all kind of trying to balance this out of, is there a day we require everybody to be in the office so that we can have effective meetings? Or is there 2 days a week that you got to be there, 3 days a week where you don't have to be there?
Right.
Or, do we just make it all free for all? And I think it's easy for us, I think, to say, oh yes, at this hypothetical level, we think these things are good things. But on a very practical level, trying to run a business, I think you have to figure out, because as soon, figure out all the details of it. And as much as I would like to be flexible, sometimes being flexible gets you in more trouble because people say, well, we said everybody had to be here on Wednesday and Bob wasn't here on Wednesday. And I mean, come on, if Bob doesn't have to be in here Wednesday, I don't have to be here on Wednesday. And so I'm not coming in on Wednesday either. That's the kind of stuff that you have to kind of deal with. So we do have to figure out ways to be fair and have an application of whatever rule set we create for flexibility, right, to be consistent based on roles and responsibilities.
That was my word of the year: consistent.
So there you are. Now, the other piece is, look, don't spend all your freaking money. One, you probably can't find the materials to do it anyway, to redesign all these offices, right? I mean, we've gone through this. I've talked on here before about the company, they just said, oh, we're going to build this out and we're going to have hoteling. And then everybody gets the office like, where the hell is Bob? Where's Jay? I don't know. I can't find him because everybody's everywhere.
Boy,
So let's
Bob
not.
seems to be a problem child in your stories.
Bob is. We
he
need to
doesn't show
introduce
up
Bob
on
to Solomon.
Wednesday. We don't know where he is in the office.
I know. When Bob's one of those 65% that leaves my company after COVID, I am going to be happy that Bob. But all that said, let's not jump so far ahead of ourselves on some of these things. I mean, you remember during the early days of COVID, it was like, oh, we're putting up plastic barriers between all our cubes. Well, yeah, what good did it do when it went up and over the air? So let's not go crazy investing in a bunch of big changes. Now, let's kind of see where these things settle out over time. You've got all the office space anyway. It's not like there's a bunch of people lining up to buy your commercial office space off you today. So, don't go crazy making changes. I think there's some time for this to settle out. We still have to see where things are going around where COVID's going to be and where people are going to be feeling out, Lou, what's comfortable in these hybrid work environments. And what they're starting out with today may change 6 months from now, just like Mr. Diamond and Mr. Solomon may change their tune over time as well.
Yeah, every article I read, they're not going to change their tune.
Well, they're not young men, so anything could happen.
In making this decision, I would take a look at some criteria. Obviously, employees crave flexibility. You've given them over a year of flexibility, and let's face it, in our society today, a year people refer to as that's the way I've always done it. And so in their mind, they've got this developed mindset. They've enjoyed it. They've tasted it. They don't want to go back. So that would be the first criteria. The other thing too, I think we would look at criteria is if employees aren't getting the flexibility that they want, they will pursue flexibility somewhere else. And as an employer, you need to understand that. You need to really take that into consideration. And that goes back to a little bit of what you said, is that if you're implementing that flexibility, that hybrid remote workforce, you need to be consistent with your rules. And everyone has to understand what the rules are. And just like in problem solving, when you and I have talked before, and I always use when I'm teaching critical thinking skills, is that we need to describe what the situation is, or what the rules are, and then what the situation is not, or what the rules are not, so that this way people truly know where they are crossing that line. And so companies need to not be forceful and dictatorial, but they need to say, okay, we're working with everybody. We want this to work. And we're going to implement this hybrid because we're hearing back from our employees that they do enjoy that flexibility of working from home, where they don't have to commute. They don't have to, worry about getting that babysitter or that childcare situation that they've had to take care of. In addition to that, you just think about how much money people have saved on automobile repair, gas, and all of that. I read a thread recently on one of the social media platforms where people were complaining about how much the prices of gas has gone up, and they were thanking one particular party that's in power now because it's their fault. And I as I try not to respond to those, but I had to respond and say, look, the increase of demand for gasoline has gone up since all of the COVID restrictions have been lifted. Therefore, people are traveling more. They're going to work. They're going on vacations. They're going out to eat more. The supply or the demand for gas has gone up, and the supply has maintained at a level where, something's got to go up. And so it's the price. So take an economics class, and that was my final comment to them. But if you think about the money that people have saved, and you can't take that away from them all of a sudden. So I believe, as we've talked before, the pendulum swung so far one way, and I think it's going to rest somewhere in the middle. I believe you're going to find hybrid is going to be, I would say, the norm for many companies.
Fair. All right. Let's move on to point 2.
Okay.
In our research here.
You got me ranting, dude. You got me ranting.
I did not encourage political.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't know what about this topic gets me ranting, but you got me ranting this morning.
All right. Well, let's talk about the leaders now. So we've heard about the wisdom of Solomon, but let's talk about what the survey found with leaders. 61% of leaders say they're thriving, 23 percentage points higher than those with decision-making authority. Leaders also report building stronger relationships with colleagues, earning higher incomes, and taking all or more of their allotted vacation days. Workers feel the disconnect. 37% of the workforce says their companies are asking for too much from them. Business leaders were more likely to be millennials or Gen X, male information workers, and further along in their careers.
Wait, slow that down. Give that one again. You went a little too fast.
Business leaders surveyed were also more likely to be millennials or Gen X, male information workers, and farther along in their careers.
Well, it makes sense because obviously this was a Microsoft study. So
yeah, Gen Z women, frontline workers, and those new to their careers reported struggling the most. So, what's our takeaway here? I think unfortunately, there's not a boomer reference, so we can't really boomer it. But what do you think, Lou? As a boomer, where do you come down on this?
Okay, Zoomer.
Yeah. I'm Gen X, man. We're just cool with all of it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was born on the cusp. Let's just make sure everybody knows that. Okay. Yeah. 1964 is the cutoff for boomers, and I was born in 1960. So even though I'm a boomer by date, I grew up, actually matured in the Gen X. So I'm right there with you.
Okay, boomer. Carry on. What are your thoughts?
It goes back to when we started talking about remote work. You have those people who were so ingrained in, if I can't see my people, how do I know they're working? And let's face it, technology has passed those people by. We've had a year where we can look at results. Okay. So take the emotion out of it. Let's go back to like when I teach decision-making, deal with the facts. The facts are companies have their productivity level has either maintained the same or increased in most levels than they did when people were back in the office. So if you just take that aside and look at it, and of course, I'm not talking, I mean, there are some industries that we have essential workers where they have had to report to work. But for the typical, when we think of a business and you got people going into the office every day, those companies have not suffered as much as we hear that they say they are right now. And so I truly, if we look at the facts, I think technology has brought us to the point where we have found out that we can do this, we can work through this technology that we're working with, either Teams or Google Meet or Zoom, whatever it may be, Facebook, FaceTime, all of that. I believe that the boomers are going to see this as an opportunity for their exit. So if you're talking about people who are looking to pursue opportunities elsewhere, they're going to look for a culture that is more the traditional corporate culture. But I believe that those opportunities are going to be far and few between. And I believe the massive portion of the workforce are going to drive this decision-making that companies are going to make, and flexibility, the crave for flexibility is going to be at the front of that decision-making.
Okay. So I don't disagree with any of that. I would say what this really shows to me is how disconnected leaders are, right? That's I think the key piece here is leaders. This is, this gets back to, if you're not spending time, not spending time out with your workers, if you're not talking to them, even through this scenario remotely, joining in meetings, getting the vibe of what's going on.
Right.
It's easy for you to say, well, it's going well for me, so it must be going well for everybody else. And that's not always the case, right? We don't know what's going on for other people. And so leaders need to get more ensconced in kind of what's going on in the workforce. And what this survey, I'm pointing to the survey, what this survey tells me is they're not doing that, right? These are still kind of these leadership mindsets are like, I go in the elevator with these people, but I don't know their names, right? And so, true story of a boss. And so that's what kind of starts to happen is you're disconnected from it. So you assume that my experience is everyone's experience.
Okay, so you just bring a reference in and you wave it real quickly at us, and then you tucked it back away, and you said this is a real story. Tell the story.
No, it's just I know I had a leader that I worked with, and we're all going up and I know he doesn't know the people that are his actual employees right in front of his face, right?
Right.
Because if you don't get out in front of your employees, and I understand some of us are shy, some of us are not outgoing, but with the great parts about being a leader, there's also the responsibilities of being a leader. And I believe part of that is getting out among your people, seeing what's going on, being in touch.
Right.
And clearly, I think what we're seeing is, my opinion is in the minority of what leaders think today. So that's just my point, is I would like to see, this is a lesson to leaders to find ways, even with hybrid or remote work, to staying in touch and being connected. I have stories of other friends who I know who've worked through this, where the senior leaders are reaching out one-to-one for just quick 5-minute touch point calls, checking in with people, right? Seeing,
and they don't realize how impactful a senior leader calling an employee and spending 5 minutes on the phone with them. How's it going? What can we do better? Just asking questions, not even talking about their job, but talking about the company and their role that they're playing in that, to seek information to help make decisions. 5 minutes goes a long way to getting that person to feel I'm cared about. People respect my opinion. So if you're leaders, if you're not doing that, you need to do it.
There you go. There we say, that's the real wisdom here.
There it is.
Just
see that?
Yeah. There you go. All right.
What's our third point here?
Pay our $50 to Nike for using Just Do It. All right. The last part of what we're doing here is high productivity is masking a workforce that is exhausted. So productivity is remaining the same or higher over the past year, but 1 in 5 global survey respondents say their employer doesn't care about their work-life balance, which is the downside of the work from home.
But that's an argument that they used when they were in the office too.
Yeah, but I will say, having managed remote workers in a sales environment,
right,
years before all this was, really talked about, most of what I heard from a lot of them was their day never ended. The office door was right there. They were in there till 6, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And there is a danger in the work from home that you never really kind of release yourself from work from home.
But that's not the employer's fault. That's the employee's fault in not being disciplined, in being able to turn off their computer, turn off their phone at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time they feel comfortable doing, and just saying, I'm done. I'm going to spend the rest of the evening with my family. I'm going to take my kids to the park. I'm going to take them for ice cream. I'm going to take my dog for a walk. I'm going to take my wife to dinner. And when I go to dinner, I'm keeping my phone in my pocket. It cracks me up because they blame the employee or the employer, but it's the employee's discipline. It's your time. Manage your time effectively, so that this way you're getting the job you need to get done in a period of time that allows you to have a good work-life balance. I don't buy that argument.
Okay, well, I feel another social media post strongly worded coming on from Lou. All right, let's talk about a couple other things. They told us that 54% feel overworked, 39% feel exhausted. The digital intensity, that's a word I've never heard before, of workers' days has increased, with the average number of meetings and chats, your favorite topic, increasing. Time spent in Microsoft Teams, remember this was a Microsoft survey, has more than doubled 2.5 times. Average meeting length is 10 minutes longer. The number of emails is up by 40.6 billion emails.
Go back. Again, you're running through these and go back, not only for our listeners, but for me, because, I am a boomer and my hearing sometimes is a little slower than your rate of speaking. What is the baseline for the meetings where they say they're 10 minutes longer? Are these 10-minute meetings that are turning into 20-minute meetings?
It says increase from 35 minutes to 45 minutes.
Okay. First of all, at the office, a meeting lasting 1 hour was not unusual.
Yeah.
So we are already below the amount of time, the average amount of time that people spent in a meeting at the office. And in fact, they could go on for longer than an hour because we're all sitting around, and because we're social, we turn it into a social activity where 35 up to 45 minutes for a meeting. Personally, I don't think that's unrealistic for someone who doesn't like meetings. to be able to get work done with a team in 35 to 45 minutes, go for it, dude.
All right. Well, so doesn't sound like Mr. Quinto is buying off on the exhausted workforce argument.
Absolutely not. No,
it's your
no.
fault.
No. And I buy into the servant leadership, empathetic leader, all of that. But if I have an employee who's telling me they are exhausted, one, I'm going to not be apathetic to those emotions, but I'm not going to be sympathetic also. I'm going to be empathetic, which means I'm going to recognize, okay, you say you're exhausted. I understand you. I can see it on your face. Mm-hmm. Now tell me, what's causing your exhaustion? And get to the root cause of the problem. Don't deal with the feeling of I'm exhausted, I'm tired. Why? Why are you tired? Why are you exhausted? And if I start to uncover or get into the root cause is that you are spending 13 to 14 hours a day at work, then I'm going to say, shame on you. You need to be a better time manager. And if you want, I'll enroll you in a time management course so that this way you learn how to manage your time more effectively so that you create a discipline that the computer gets opened at 8 a.m. and it gets shut at 5 p.m. Period. End of story. No one needs to be working past 5, 6 p.m. And I'll use the exception unless you're working with people in time zones which are different from yours, but then your day will start earlier or start later if your direct contacts are with people who are an hour ahead of you or an hour behind you or 3 hours ahead of you or 3 hours behind you. You need to create that discipline. You've got to create those parameters. So my one comment, the boomer side of me would be, don't complain you're exhausted. It's your own damn fault. You need to create that discipline. And we started talking about this in March and April of last year about getting used to remote work and creating a work discipline, having that private area that you go to, which is your office, your workplace. And when you sit there, you're in work mode. When you walk away, it's your time. And you need to create that discipline. So I'm sorry, Craig. I have no empathy
Kids
today. What's that?
Kids today.
Exactly. Yes. I'm not going to say kids today, but don't complain. Don't complain if you're creating the exhaustion yourself. You've got work to do. You're hired for 40 hours a week, maybe 45, maybe 50, but you need to divide that up and you need to utilize that time. And again, are you hitting those numbers? Is your productivity there? And the other thing I would recommend to people too is if they truly think that they're exhausted because they're working too hard, start keeping right next to your desk, have a piece of paper and log all of the time that you're spending at work, every hour, what you're doing. Every 15 minutes, make sure that you're almost like an attorney or an accountant who has to track their hours for clients. And then at the end of the week, try to look and see where you're spending your most productive time, but also where are you wasting time? Because if you can eliminate those wasting time, and the only way you can do it is by analyzing what you're doing and when you're doing it. So, okay, I'm done.
You need a break? Do you need some oxygen? You good?
Yeah, I do. I was starting to get hot and heavy here. I'm sorry.
I know. Boy,
well, this is a big issue.
And there was a lot of this, Lou, and
what was there a lot of pointing? I'm sorry
for a lot of gesticulating and pointing.
Okay.
However,
for our viewers, I apologize if I was pointing.
I think we have to kind of dig in, as you said, to what's driving the behavior, right? So if you're overworking, is that because you feel like you need to do it because you're working from home? Is it something you're getting from your manager pushing you to do these things? Because we have talked about, if you're working from home, and we've talked about just kind of this new idea of leadership of, we don't care how many hours you work, we just want the job to get done. Of course, that can go both ways, right? I don't care if you work 60 hours if the job's done or 30 hours if the job's done, right?
Right.
If it's 30 hours, I just need to give you more to do. So let's kind of understand where that's coming from culturally in the organization, because you can certainly have, as we've seen from the great empathy shown by the leaders that we talked about in the survey, that people have this tendency to not think people are working if I can't see them. Hell, I knew people weren't working if I couldn't see them. So, or when I could, you know, there's just below the cue ball. That man is playing Galaga from the old Avengers movie. So at any rate, we really need to understand what's sitting behind these feelings and what we're doing as leaders that are driving it, because we really haven't seen huge numbers of people leaving their employer. I mean, I think that's coming. So there should have been enough staff for all this, but I do think there's also some people who feel guilty about this because they know they were dealing with their kid all day or whatever it is that they were dealing with. So maybe some of this is just, I've had to interact more with my kids that I didn't have to do before with the school. And now I'm having to do this on top. So for a lot of people, it probably felt like two jobs. So this is like what we talked about with the office space. Let's see how this kind of sorts out over time as we get back to more normalcy with kind of the non-work life, that kids are back in school and different things like that. And let's see what that starts to look like then.
Well, and the other thing I'm going to point out here, and I believe this is truly part of the issue, is management leadership should not be pitted against their employees, and employees should not be pitted against their leadership. I'm going to use a term that unfortunately for several years now is considered a bad word, and that is compromise. We have to work together as individuals, and we have to find common ground, and we have to compromise. So if I feel that I'm working too hard, I need to go to my boss with facts. Okay, remember Deming said, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data." Well, if you feel you're working too hard and you have the proof that you're spending more time than you should, bring the data. So sit there and track your hours, and then get with your manager and tell your manager, show your manager, you've given me this responsibility. This is how much time it's taking me to do this new responsibility or this new project. But yet I have all of this other stuff that I've always been responsible for that I still have to maintain. And this is why I'm working 65, 70 hours a week. Can you help me? And there needs to be that compromise. But to stand on my side of the fence or to stand on your side of the fence and just point fingers and cast aspersions of, oh, you're just working me harder because you think I'm not working as much and I'm not in meetings as much. No, stop. Let's get together. Leadership, team members, and let's create the culture and the environment that's going to make whatever type of remote hybrid situation workplace be successful. I'm done.
Okay. We'll close the Bible on that one right
there. Did I point my finger a lot during that?
Yeah, you did a little bit.
I did. I'm sorry. To our viewers, I am so sorry. This just, it's got so many different sides, and I can see so many. I can literally argue both sides of this coin. But at the same time, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, we have got to make your company successful, regardless of what's going on. And people need to work together to find out what that environment, what that new culture is going to be. And there needs to be guidelines. So, all right. My key takeaway is, let's not ever talk about remote work again.
Oh no, we have to, Lou. It's so fun.
Yeah, I can't believe this worked me up as much as it did, but I guess I've been dealing with it from both perspectives, from the team members that I'm working with and the leaders I'm working with. They're starting to draw a line down the middle. And my key takeaway is, you need to create that new culture, because it will be a new culture. There is no question about it. Yeah. You need to create it. And it starts with compromise.
Yeah. So Lou, what my key takeaway is to go back to our interview with Adam Weber. Lead like a human. Don't think about these employees or your bosses, right? Employees, bosses are, don't other them. Lead like a human, treat people like you want to be treated. And then I think we can get through a lot of these issues and have some awareness on both sides, because, look, from the, employees love to, rip down on their leaders too. And some of them deserve it, but leadership is no easy task to carry out either. And you don't always know at the employee level what the leaders are trying to deal with too. So, lead like a human, have some empathy both ways, and then we can start moving the businesses forward and really getting in line to what we want to do, which is be successful in whatever endeavor we set ourselves up with. So that is my key takeaway from today. Bring us home, Lou.
Wow. Okay. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership, as Craig and I discussed, and primarily I ranted about checking in on the state of remote work. Definitely is a topic that is going to be in many boardrooms and conference rooms over the next couple months as people begin to go back to work. As COVID restrictions get lifted, you're going to find that that conversation is going to be one that can be very heated, as you've seen demonstrated, at least by me in this podcast. So anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. If you liked it, like, share, subscribe, because obviously it's a topic that lots of people are going to be talking about it. You can watch us on YouTube and LinkedIn, but in addition, you can also catch Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership every Thursday on all of your major podcast platforms. So until next time, Craig, I'm going to go back to it. Keep your hands washed, keep your distance, and get a vaccine. I'm Lou Quinto.
I'm Craig Anderson.